So this is an interesting subject, making learning alive at work. Why have we chosen that heading? Well, there'll be no surprise to you as you walk around this exhibition that we're in a world of multiple devices. We're in a world where we learn at any time during our waking day. We use technology in a way that ensures that we can learn what we need to, and that includes for work as well. No longer is training or learning a single event. It's something that can be intertwined into your working day, and technology is enabling that. But there is an issue which we need to confront, and that is that too often the organisations we work for are actually behind what we expect to be able to use in terms of technology. So I think there's a real challenge, and it's something that we have to address, but we can as well using technology. So that's just a few thoughts from me, just to open up the session. So I'm going to hand over in a second to our panelists. Just let me explain the format. It's called Ignite. Some of you have perhaps experienced this before. If anyone's actually tried to do an Ignite session, and I have, you'll know just how difficult it is to cram the points that you want to make carefully into 5 minutes. Not just 5 minutes, but 20 slides of equal length. So I hope that you give our panelists due sympathy and attention as they tackle this particular task. So just let me introduce very briefly who we have on our panel today. We have Jasmine Rose from Marks & Spencer, Jennifer Flock from 21st, Henrietta Palmer from TUI, and Dr. Genny Dixon from Towards Maturity. So I've got a running order, which is that. So the first person I'm going to introduce is Jasmine. Now Jasmine is the Learning Development Manager at Marks & Spencer, and she's responsible for learning in all 750 stores in the UK and manages a team of learning design consultants. So, Jasmine, over to you. I think you need to use this microphone.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Fantastic. It's a good start. Right. I've divided the presentation today from an M&S perspective of the past, present and future of making learning alive at work. And these 4 sections you'll see are themes that will run through my presentation in 5 minutes. The journey started 127 years ago when we were founded as a market stall. The 2 main principles that Marks & Spencer's were founded on was to have customers at the heart of our business, and secondly, to have staff who are happy and comfortable whenever they worked. As the business evolved throughout the ages, the key themes is about having the right product in the right place at the right time for our customers, but then having the people with the right capability to be able to do that. So officially, 1933 was the first training department, and training was very, very, very simple. It was either on the floor or in a classroom. And believe it or not, get this guys, it wasn't until the 1960s we introduced the first workbook as an alternative method of learning. But learning at that time, and now I'm talking about the late 50s, was very, very hierarchical. It was very controlled, and we had training managers in place who used to go around from store to store looking at the capability of high-performing managers, but everything was very, very, very prescriptive, and there wasn't space to challenge the status quo. If I bring you into the world today, so you may know your high street store where we sell food and clothing. We obviously have a very long online presence. Our food pro formas. We've also got Simply Foods and franchises in over 400 stores. We do banking facilities, and internationally we have over 400 stores in 50 different countries. Now, thinking about keeping learning alive at work when you're talking about such a breadth of portfolio is no easy deal. So we have 2 things. This is where we start to see a blurred line between who our sales advisors are, our frontline staff, and who the core customer is. Let's take a gentleman over there in the back row, for example. If you come into our store on a Saturday and you're wanting to buy a Chardonnay and you're thinking, okay, what's going to go with it? Is it a cheese sauce? Is it a fish sauce? You're going to want core information. You're going to want your sales advisors also to have that information. So is it learning? Is it data? Or is it just information that everybody needs in order to get what they want? So, as we've evolved and on-the-floor training is still key to us today, we have different formats. Only recently have we actually started using the iPads as a format to sell from, but as of yet the infrastructure doesn't allow us to use that for learning. So we do use a lot of paper-based methods on the sales floor. We have workshops, which is a very traditional methodology, but usually at management type of courses and competency-based courses. But what we're now doing is if we design a workshop, we're designing it into modules so that if you're having a team communication session or a team meeting, you can delve into that module to get that key learning for your teams. And believe it or not, guys, this time last year we didn't have any internet access in stores for our personnel. So any e-learning we designed, with Brightwave usually, was deployed via CD-ROMs. And only in the last 6 months have we had a URL agreed where you can now access your e-learning at home or in stores. Accessibility is moving for us really, really quickly. And if you think about the evolution of time from the early 1900s, which was a slow change, now literally every other week we're looking at new and different ways to deploy learning. The old handouts you used to get in the workshop, they're going, and we're actually now using QR codes where our store managers have iPhones. So we don't have to take away lots and lots of pieces of paper. The guys can now scan that data and that information. So let's take you a little bit into the future. So what does the future look like from an M&S perspective? Stores with no tills, that's the Apple model. Personalised signage, so when Mr. Smith walks into the store, it will say, "Welcome, Mr. Smith. Those trousers you ordered are now on promotion on floor number 2, if you'd like to make your way up there." And from a food point of view, if you do your weekly shopping, you can then hire a chef who will cook it all for you, take it home for you, prepare it and finish it off. Just a couple of things that we're talking about for the future. How do we keep learning live at work in that environment? What does the staff member of the future look like? Where we go from baby bloomers, Generation X, Y, Z, what does Generation Double Z look like? We need to think about what we're doing to provide learning for that environment and that audience. Historically, we would push information to the individual, and we know we now need the individual to pull data for themselves. So we have a whole campaign about learner-led learning, which is about the individual wanting that data, supported by their line managers. The world's getting smaller, social networking is getting bigger, and where we have stores in China, Dubai, obviously in the UK, we need people to be able to share best practices and talk regularly, and that's really what we're aiming to do. And again, it goes back to the blurred lines of data, information, engagement and communication. The word learning potentially is going. I do need a drink, that's not why I put that on there, but it's just to say, those of you can remember, showing your age a bit, it's anytime, any place, anywhere learning. This is a guy at home in his front room. He's accessing his social network, he's learning from home, he's working at home. If this is the guy of the future, the front room of the future, what does the store of the future look like? Another debate for another day. But making commercial sense really takes us back to the foundation of the business. 2 key things: happy staff equals happy customers. I've been Jasmine Rose. It's been an exhausting session. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Jasmine. What we'll do is we'll have a discussion and lots of questions at the end when everyone's spoken, but perhaps if there are any specific questions for Jasmine at the moment, we'll take 1 or 2 now. Have a think while I ask one, actually. I've got one for you, Jasmine, which is obviously, I think that's, I'll hand it to you. We've got, almost everybody here will have a smartphone in their pockets, and that will be the same for people who work at Marks & Spencer. How do you see that technology being exploited, if at all, in the future? So the bring your own device kind of technology.
Thank you. I think for the management and the head office population, it's something that we're already doing. People have that access. The concerns that we have with the majority of our sales floor staff is that they are on the sales floor. And if you go into M&S as a customer, you want that service. You don't necessarily want somebody looking at their devices. You want them up, you want them alert, you want them responsive. So we are thinking about the opportunities to deploy learning so they can do it at home in their own time. We have computers backstage so people can do it on their breaks and after work. But actually having those smartphones on the sales floor, it then competes against our service proposition.
Immediate questions for Jasmine before we move on? Yes. You have to really speak up.
So what time provisions do you make for your staff to do? Yeah.
We've got a campaign which we call 15 minutes of learning. What have you learnt today? So either before they start work, after their lunch break, or actually before the end of the day, it's about what have they learned that's new and different. And it may be about products, systems, or operations. But depending on what the promotions are that we're working on, we're launching, we have key times set aside for teams to learn. You're keeping me fit, right?
Hi. You talked about learning at home and people having more accessibility to learning. Is the learning at home, is that done in individuals' time or is that done in the work's time? And are you expecting people to learn about M&S or about the different values within M&S and the different things they need to learn within M&S in their own time? What's the trade-off? Where's the balance?
I guess around the learning at work, it's really about the individual being hungry for information. So anything will be accessible during their work time, but by having it accessible at home, it's really about what you want to do to better yourself, what you might want to do to progress or to get promoted. So the drive is about the individual being hungry to learn, and therefore if they do it at home, it will be a bonus for them, but it's not included in their pay.
The question just follows on from that. How are you motivating your employees to do that, to take learning on and do it at home?
It links directly into performance management because there are lots of opportunities in M&S of companies so wide to progress and to move on. So therefore, when it comes to your performance management, where you're actually able to say, this is what I've done, this is what I've challenged, this is what I've learned myself, whether I've actually gone onto a website in my own time versus looked at a book on the sales floor, it's really about the individual's drive. Thank you.
You keep that one. No. If you keep that one over there, and I'll have this one. Thank you very much, Jasmine. Amazing to hear the advances that have been made over the last 6 to 12 months in Marks & Spencer in terms of moving from CD-ROM to online delivery. Our next speaker, I think, is going to give us a very different perspective. She is Jennifer Flock, who is Chief Operating Officer of 21st, which is one of the world's leading gender consultancies, working with companies interested in optimizing both halves of the market and both halves of the talent pool, the male and female halves. I'll hand over to you.
Yep. Hello, I'm Jennifer Flock. I'm the COO of 21st. We are a global consulting firm focused on helping companies create better gender balance. In the 21st century, we all know we're in a world that is changing fast. For example, we talk about the big W's, whether in terms of web and technological revolution, or weather and the challenges of climate change, or world, globalization and the emergence of new global players. But today I'd like to talk about another big trend shaping business, women. What we've seen at the end of the 20th century and the beginning of the 21st century is a massive arrival of women into the economy, with a resulting shift in gender roles, labor forces, and customers. And I want to focus today on the opportunity this creates for companies. We talk about gender balance, a mix of men and women, as a key lever of performance. For companies today, in virtually every industry and market around the world, better gender balance can make good business sense. But why do companies care? There are 4 key questions that companies are asking themselves. First of all, in terms of talent, are we attracting the world's best talent? In terms of markets, do our staff and our products and services accurately reflect our customers and their expectations? In terms of innovation, do we have enough diversity of thought? And finally, in terms of leadership and performance, is our leadership team prepared to lead in today's complex, global, multicultural world? In terms of talent, if we look at the percentage of university graduates, the numbers have dramatically changed in recent years. 60% of global graduates are now women. That's the case across Europe and North America. 63% in Brazil, 58% in South Africa, 62% in Saudi Arabia. This is new. What this means is that women are no longer an interesting minority to be managed among other diverse populations. They are the majority of educated talent, and increasingly so in the future. So can companies really say that they recruit and promote only the best if their management teams are 80 to 90% men? For most, the math just doesn't add up. So now let's look at the market perspective. Today, 80% of purchasing decisions are made by women. And of course, we're not just talking about clothes, makeup, and food, but rather computers, smartphones, financial services, holidays, real estate, and other big-ticket items. Women are the majority of internet users and dominate leading social media websites. For B2B companies, too, many key purchasers or decision makers are now women, as are key figures in government or regulatory affairs. To put things in perspective, let's take a look at the following graph. On the left, you have women's global income compared to the GDP of China and India. Our conclusion? Smart companies need to put as much effort into engaging effectively with female consumers as they do with emerging markets. But have companies really taken the shift in the market into account? Have they developed products and services with gender in mind? What are the different needs or interests? Most companies haven't even begun to tap into this blue ocean of opportunity. A quick look at innovation, which most companies put front and center in their strategy and criteria for success. The research shows that the most innovative and efficient teams are a mix of 50% women and 50% men. Finally, in terms of leadership, stakeholders are increasingly demanding that homogeneous teams can no longer be able to lead effectively in today's complex world. Moreover, the research shows that better gender balance in management leads to better financial performance. So what's the issue? When we look closely at what's happening within companies today, we see a remarkably similar picture. Many companies have become much better at recruiting a relatively balanced group of people. However, as we go up the management hierarchy, the percentage of women drops at every single management level. Understanding why and eliminating this trend is key to changing the balance. But we've still got a ways to go. At 21st, we do an annual gender balance scorecard survey of the top 100 companies in Europe, the US, and Asia. The results show that women make up only 10% of executive committee positions worldwide. This brings us to the learning challenge for organizations. How to ensure that managers get it at all levels and in all parts of the business, and that they have the skills and the competencies to help their company take advantage of the economic opportunities better balance can bring. Our learning approach combines the why, the what, and the how of better gender balance. Success depends on getting the buy-in and commitment of senior management, but also in knowing how to cascade messages and skill building across a broad group of global managers. Thank you very much. I'd be happy to take questions and continue the discussion during the panel.
Thank you, Jennifer. Some interesting and surprising facts, and perhaps some that aren't so surprising. We've worked together to create some e-learning on this subject, obviously. I want to ask you, how important is it, some of these trends towards the way that we're going to be learning using technology? You mentioned how women dominate social media and the use of technology. How do you think that's going to really affect things in the future?
Well, I think, first of all, the reason why we go through some of these statistics and arguments about the business case is that that's really important for engaging learners. We have worked together on an e-learning course, and the heart of the e-learning course very much does talk about the business case, as well as some of the questions around what are the differences between men and women that managers need to know, as well as how and what companies need to be doing and what individual managers need to be doing. But the key to successful e-learning is very much about making the course relevant for managers. Yes, it's about providing technology, but it's about providing also content in a way that managers see the direct link to their own challenges as managers, and to make sure that they understand how the content of the course can help them become better managers and ultimately be more successful in their jobs.
Any questions from the audience for Jennifer at all? Okay. I'm sure we'll have some questions for you later. So, our third speaker, Henrietta Palmer. Henri is Digital Learning Manager at TUI UK and Ireland. I'm not going to introduce you any more than that, because I think you're going to do that yourself, aren't you? Here. Are you ready? Ready, steady?
Hello. My role is to oversee the digital learning strategy, ensuring the best quality deliverables that meet the needs of our diverse audience and show best value for our investment. TUI UK and Ireland are best known for our brands First Choice, Thomson Airways and Thomson Holidays. Our workforce is extremely diverse and each has its own preferences. In retail, preferences are for visual training that guides and supports. There must be a clear purpose, as we're taking learners away from their time to sell. Our overseas people are, in the main, on seasonal contract. Every year we have many new starters. They need to hit the ground running as soon as they get to resort, as it's all about the customer. Technology is a real barrier here. In resort, learners have no regular access to computers. This year we're trialling tablets. In airline, the preference is for focused content without bells and whistles, where learners can see a real purpose. Most e-learning has a focus on revision for formal examinations. Most crew are again on seasonal contract and also need to learn rapidly about things like customer service. In head office, most work on PCs and laptops, manage their own time and are used to self-study. So here, digital delivery has a focus on self-development and legislative requirements. We sometimes need to deliver a single solution group-wide. Here we have a real challenge that what we deliver is relevant to all and in up to 14 languages. So as well as the obvious benefits of digital learning you all know, to us the real benefits are the ability to rapidly train our employees, train product and systems knowledge at the right time, allow for practice for examinations, and deliver and track completion of compliance. To do this, we deliver some programs in-house, but where we can't resource or the program needs high-end assets or design, we go externally. There are some key approaches we always try to use. Where possible, we direct learners outside of the learning to materials kept up to date by others, such as the internet. In our induction, sometimes learners are taken straight to content and others they explore. Reference libraries enable us to supply detailed information in a format that's easy to access and doesn't need to be printed. This program provides essential training to our people overseas who aspire to be team leaders or managers, a vital role with many skill sets. Learners are able to access a huge portfolio of resources clumped in relevant areas of the training for ongoing reference. Where suitable, we template, reusing as much of the build as possible. This reduces costs and development time. In these instances, we try to change the look and feel a little bit, and learners may not even realize the base of the program's the same. Here you see anti-bribery and corruption and e-procurement, both based on the same build. The first was anti-bribery, which we kept simple so it could be translated. This enabled us to rework parts of the build for e-procurement as systems piece, reducing cost. Our newest approach is developing for both tablet and PC. Our biggest investment here is with Brightwave, the overseas hub. Not all of this launches on tablet this year, but it is a step in the right direction. It forms part of an online induction portfolio to be completed before arrival in resort, with reference materials that can be used throughout time overseas. To meet the diverse audience needs, we work in partnership with our learners. With Airline, we identify content one can reasonably consider is known. This enables us to focus content only where it's needed, reducing time and making purpose clear. Where learners need supported learning, we ask them what would achieve support, what would hold their interest and their confidence. For those that don't have easy access to technology, we provide training in chunks that can be completed quickly when technology is available. When delivering a single solution group-wide, we keep it simple, taking care to minimize the need for localization. So, in summary, with a diverse audience, limited budget and resource, we meet the needs of our people by developing only where the need is greatest, where the learner understands what's in it for them and why they're completing, and where there is a critical need to the business. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Henri. Any immediate questions for Henri? I've got one, so if you want to have a think about it. So you've got this plan to enable reps in resorts to take training on tablets. Is that right? Are they going to be actually landing in a resort and then being asked to do some of that e-learning when they get there, or some of it before they actually arrive?
Good question. First, I'd like to say thank goodness that's over. It's a mixture of both, really. The portfolio of products, when we actually supply the people overseas with their contract, part of the information they're provided is the training portfolio that's available to them. So this is available not only online, but also this year will be available on tablet. And of course, they only get the tablet supplied by work when they actually come with us. But there's an expectation based on the users and the people that would be going overseas that they may have PCs, they may have laptops, and they may have tablets. So we really want to make access as easy as possible.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, you've got very different audiences, haven't you? From the airlines, where compliance is important, to I suppose, transitory employees in resorts who come and go in fairly short space of time. Any questions for Henri before we move on to our final speaker? No? Thank you very much, Henri. So, our final Ignite speaker is Dr. Genny Dixon, who is, let me just get the... I should know this, who's head of research at Towards Maturity, which is a benchmarking practice that provides independent expert advice and support in the application of learning innovation to accelerate business performance. So really I suppose the industry research body, I think it would be fair to say, for everybody here in this event. So over to you, Genny.
Thank you. 9 out of 10 businesses want to integrate learning and work. And for 4 of them, this is something that's actually critical today. In this short presentation, I want to explore some of the ways in which learning technologies can help to bridge the gap between learning and work. Towards Maturity is a benchmarking practice. We research the factors that lead to successful use of technology in workplace learning. And we've been doing this since 2003. The companies that are the most immature are getting the best results. Historically, we've been studying what successful organizations are doing and how we can learn from them. 500 L&D professionals took part in our 6th study, Bridging the Gap, last summer, so we now know more about how to drive the transformation of learning than ever before. And people are wanting more from their learning technologies, much more. Above all, they're looking for increased value for money, no longer just on reducing costs or time away from the job. And technology is working for companies. It is adding value. It is helping them to improve efficiency. And if you remember nothing else from the presentation, take away the one figure, 22% as a key performance indicator. But our top learning companies are doing so much more. These 6 work streams in our Towards Maturity model highlight where so many organizations can go wrong and where successful ones are making a difference. Now, you'll all get a copy of our infographic to see this one better. Essentially, the purples show what we're trying to do, the blues show what we're actually managing, but compare the blues and the greens where the top learning companies are doing so much better. So if we look at just one of these, sharing. 95% of us want to use technologies to increase the sharing of best practice. But in reality, very few companies are achieving what they're seeking. Something like 1 in 4 companies. Yes, the technologies themselves can help, but under half are allowing their employees full access to the internet. But our top learning companies, much more likely to support collaboration. In talent management, we might understand as L&D professionals that link between learning and practice, but less than half are reporting that their staff understand how their work links to the organisation's performance. 91% want to improve talent and performance management, but only 1 in 5 are really achieving this. But are we using the right tools to support onboarding and recruitment? Do we encourage our learners to create their own strategies? Or do we provide them with such a plethora of different technologies that we're actually in danger of drowning them in technology? The simple things often work the best, like job aids or checklists. Too many of our L&D staff are still out of their comfort zone and out of their depth with technology. But they perceive that their learners have the same problems that they do. Indeed, trusting them to manage their own learning is not high on their list of priorities. Only 28% allow learners to self-select their learning. 19% promote a culture of self-reliance. 23% of managers make time for their staff and encourage them to learn on the job. So how can benchmarking help? It's common practice across other industries, but why are L&D different? If you're in the top 10% already, you want to keep and celebrate your position. If not, surely you want to learn how to get there. We benchmark informally all the time, but other parts of the business are much more systematic in their approach to benchmarking. So a little exercise for you, no longer just to sit and listen, but consider the statement at the top. And on a scale of 1 to 10, take just 5 seconds to think about the extent to which you agree for your company. And you've got to be quick and ready for this, because now we're going to see the Mexican wave effect. When I call your number, put your hand up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Look around. Don't you want to know what these guys are doing differently? Our Towards Maturity Index is derived from 100 such performance statements. And even if you missed the 2012 study, you can still take part via our online benchmarking centre and get ideas to help improve performance support and practical resources. And despite the pace of change, the issues that face us are the same as they were nearly 20 years ago. The barriers are, though, within our power to change. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jenny. And yeah, hopefully you'll all have a copy of the infographic that Jenny mentioned, and I really urge you to also go and find the report from 2012, the Benchmarking Index and Benchmarking Study. It's a fantastic way to see and compare yourself to those companies that are actually demonstrating good practice and demonstrating how that good practice in terms of e-learning leads to business results as well. I've got one quick question, and that is, we talked about sharing and collaboration. How are these top learning companies actually encouraging and enabling that? Is there any evidence to show us what they're actually doing in practice?
It isn't just about the technology, that's for sure. Although where companies are making available the right technologies to support collaboration, then they have their learners perhaps will have a better chance, whether it be using social media in learning and development, or whether it's having the right kind of curation tools to help companies to organise what the many resources are out there. But it's much more about promoting a learning culture within the organisation. Perhaps it's using user-generated content to build the resources from bottom up rather than providing them as a top-down solution. There are so many different ways that the learners themselves might get involved. But having a supportive team in L&D and, of course, in the management that are actually using and demonstrating these things for themselves in their own learning and development can be a huge factor.
Great, thank you, Jenny. Are there any questions specifically for Jenny? Okay, have a seat. And what I'd like to do is ask a few questions for everybody or anyone who would like to answer them. So I've got a few. And then please, people in the audience would do care to ask your own questions. One thing that struck me as we've listened to you all is that there's a real role for learning and development professionals to play here, but there's a real challenge as well. How are we as a profession going to have to adapt in order to make the most of the technology and also make sure that we're making learning alive at work? So the question really is, are you going to be doing the same job in 2 or 3 years' time, or how will it have changed? Anyone? Jasmine, I can see. No?
Hello. I actually think Jasmine did answer some of that question when at the end of her presentation. But I think in the same way, I think very few of us who are learning and development professionals here today are doing the same job that they were doing 3 years ago. I very much doubt that we will be in 3 years' time. And I think what it is using the most of the technology that we've got available to us and delivering training, whether that be face-to-face, whether that be technology-based, whether that be pre-recorded webinar, in a form that enables people to manage their own development. Push and pull, I believe, was the way that it was put. So that, for example, when people are pottering around their kitchen in the evening, looking at their emails on BlackBerry and find out that there's a meeting the next day that they need to prepare for, they can get to that content quickly and be prepared as they wish to be.
I think I could see us more as content providers. So instead of us actually going away and designing the workshop or designing the workbook or that piece of e-learning, it's making sure whatever people are accessing is up to date and has got the latest information on it. So it's a similar role, but less around design, more around the management of that information.
Okay.
When we asked L&D professionals what changes they were looking at over the next 2 years, they were definitely focusing on becoming much more strategic in their approach, supporting collaborative activity, supporting informal learning, much more strength there than in managing learning administration or in the delivery of classes and courses or even in content development. It is moving to a much more strategic position.
Yeah, I wanted to just make a comment about to echo some of the things that I talked about in my presentations. The world is changing very fast, whether we're talking about gender or we're talking about other kinds of changes. And I think that what we need to do as practitioners is be able to translate what those changes are that are happening in the larger business context into content that is very relevant for managers in their day-to-day job. So I think there is an exercise of translation and designing content that really speaks to managers and makes it relevant for them in their day-to-day work. Of course, then it's about providing the technology solutions, but I would say content is really core.
Okay, thank you. Henri, your example of someone sitting over dinner and suddenly realizing they've got a meeting the next day, I mean, that's an interesting one, isn't it? Because we may be just tempted to...
It means I should probably plan better.
But we might just get onto Google and hope that we're going to hit something that's useful. But actually, it would be great if we knew where to go, and that learning and development have provided us with some sort of structure. Even if it's not a course, it could be that they've done that research first and enabled you to very quickly get access to the things that are going to be relevant to that meeting the next day.
I think you're right, actually. I think one of the key things is it's about the learning and development professional understanding what people need now and also looking to the future and what people will need and making sure it's available in developed and available in a method that suits the individual when they need it. And I think the delivery mechanism of that is absolutely key.
Thank you. Okay. So we've talked about sort of push and pull and different ways of accessing information, and we haven't really spoken about it today. But the formal versus informal kind of debate is also relevant here. I mean, surely there is still a place for someone just dipping in and doing half an hour of well-structured training on a subject they just want to get the answer to. When do you think formal and informal learning are best suited? What sort of situations would you say it's good to have the pulling and the sharing versus the pushing and the more formal structured kind of training? Any thoughts?
I think certainly where the learning is related to regulatory or legal requirements, compliance related, there's still going to be a very strong argument for having that library of formalised, quality controlled and consistent approach to delivery. Where your staff are perhaps looking to develop their careers or even their personal goals, then there might be much greater opportunity to look at more informal means of learning.
Yeah, I think it's really important to understand what the needs are of the different populations in an organization. So, for example, we work with managers both at the top of an organization, so really at the top management level, as well as managers across global organizations. And I think that it's important to understand and be able to segment the different populations and what are the needs of those populations and the most appropriate content and delivery mechanisms for each of those populations. So having a relatively analytical approach. For example, the way that we segment is oftentimes when we work with top management teams, we will rely more on in-person sessions, facilitating debate and action planning and decision-making sessions in a more in-person context. That's not really realistic when you talk about rolling out content or skills to 100,000 managers, in which case we look at more online delivery mechanisms. So I think it's important to be thoughtful in who you're speaking to and how best to reach them.
Thank you. I mean, actually, one stat that I noticed in Jasmine's presentation I thought was very interesting, and that is that today 1 in 3 people are professionals or managers compared to 1 in 7 100 years ago. I mean, the truth is, in the Western economy, we're now an economy of knowledge workers, increasingly, and it's for those people, I think, that they, having that collaborative pull effect or pull way of learning is particularly relevant. Jasmine, were you going to say anything?
No, it's just really kind of to endorse your point, investing in the management, the leaders role modeling the behaviour that they want their teams to then to pursue, and then making sure that we've then got the individuals having the right amount of time, which is the first question I got today, having the right amount of time to learn as and when they need to.
Are there any questions from people sitting here in the audience at all? Well, look, I think you've done amazingly well, actually. Not only is it an extremely difficult format to do the 5 minutes, but it's an incredibly difficult environment to talk in. And I just hope people have been able to hear, first of all, and actually get some insights and benefit from the speakers. I'm sure you have. So I'd just like to thank the 4 speakers, presenters again, and perhaps a round of applause. Thank you very much. Thank you.